Riches do not consist in the possession of treasures, but in the use made of them. Napoleon Bonaparte. The elites are planning a paradigm shift. If you are aware, you can benefit from this. If you are not, you can fall victim to their plan. Please spread awareness by sharing my videos, liking, and subscribing. Financial Services Committee streamed live on September 29, 2020. Thomas Emmer spoke about fintech and crypto. Listen carefully to the problem he is describing.
The OCC has long held and will continue to ensure that their regulated institutions operate in a safe and sound manner, provide fair access to financial services, and treat customers fairly. I'm certain that as details begin to emerge and payment charters are granted, the OCC will continue to fulfill their mission. In addition, regulatory certainty is a goal that Acting Comptroller Brooks and I share. That's why last week I introduced the Securities Clarity Act, which would clarify securities law in a technologically agnostic way and allow for the distribution of an underlying asset that is in fact a commodity. With regard to blockchain technologies, the Securities Clarity Act would allow for the distribution of a token following a registered securities offering. So long as actors play by the rules of the road, they deserve the assurances that regulators will not continue to cause uncertainty and will in fact support innovation in America.
Tom Emmer submitted the Security Clarity Act, which will give clarity to security law in a technology agnostic way. And he mentions an underlying asset which is in fact a commodity. We know what asset he's talking about. I believe this is the regulatory clarity that we are looking for, is the Security Clarity Act. If this passes, that will label the digital asset as a commodity. The distribution of a token followed by a registered security offering. Is this the IPO that we've been waiting for?
When you say over 2 years, first off, my position's very clear. XRP is not a security.
That interview took place a couple of months ago. Brad Garlinghouse and Tom Emmer were discussing digital assets, and Tom Emmer publicly stated that XRP is not a security. It is clear that there is a relationship with the folks at Ripple and Tom Emmer. I believe Tom Emmer is pushing for this. Nations around the world want this to happen, but it simply won't if the USA is not on board. Tom Emmer is pushing domestically and Benoit Couere is creating the guidelines on the international front. Benoit recorded this interview on the Bank of International Settlements YouTube channel on September 28, 2020.
These paradigmatic shifts raise important questions that your panel discussions will cover today, and ones that we, at the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, have been considering in depth for the last few years. In my remarks today, I would like to emphasize the critical importance of international collaboration in delivering the financial architecture of the future and highlight the role the BIS will play.
Benoit calls this a paradigm shift. Those are bold words. This is happening, and the Bank of International Settlements is going to create the guidelines and deliver it to the G20. Right now, if two central banks chose to atomically swap assets with XRP, it would be game over. However, that won't happen because the USA has the world reserve currency. That won't happen because the US has the largest military. And if two banks decided to do that, we would go to war. The USA has to be on board before this can happen, and as you can see domestically, we have people like Tom Emmer pushing for this.
When it comes to central bank digital currencies, we think there's a place for both the central bank digital currencies and the decentralized digital currencies. They're different things, right? The beauty of the decentralized digital currencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, for example, is they move value with just pure economics, right? They're policy free. They don't bring the political elements along with the value. Whereas a central bank digital currency, and I'm not criticizing this, it's just saying this is just an absolute truth, it moves value and policy and politics along the way. So it becomes very difficult to kind of integrate two CBDCs together with not just the economics, which is simple and policy free, but it's the political elements that become kind of more challenging. So whether that be in China, where you're going to have maybe social credit scores, capital controls, all completely, that's great, that's their rules. How is that going to mesh with other things? So you need a decentralized digital currency as kind of that, interpreter between those. And we think that's a great role, and why these decentralized digital currencies are going to be so important in the digitized global economy that we're all in, and that will only increasingly become so.
The world is going to change and fast. Why? Because of the debt problem, because of the inefficiencies. They have painted themselves into a corner by issuing this much debt. Things need to change, and digital assets will improve the economy by taking away the frictions. At the same time, interest rates will be able to go negative with CBDCs. While on the macro scale, the central banks will have a trustless asset to exchange value. Assets that are fair because they won't have physical policy and monetary policy. It's simply code.
Payments across borders are still typically slow, opaque, and costly, which is particularly the case for lower value payments such as remittances. There is much scope to improve the quality of payment services in terms of convenience, transparency, and speed. However, differences in consumer habits across markets and varying degrees of maturity in banking systems and payment markets may impede localized solutions for greater interoperability or integration. Disparate levels of technological advancement and adoption can also create challenges for cross-border payments and the ability of public authorities to coordinate across jurisdictions. One key challenge, therefore, is how authorities and central banks can use their roles as catalysts and facilitators to spur digital innovation and increase interoperability or integration in cross-border payment services.
We are moving to a new system, and the Interledger Protocol is going to be the protocol of the Internet of Value. Nations will issue their CBDCs and send them across the ILP like web pages on the Internet. There are going to be many winners. Don't confuse my analysis. I'm bullish on macro crypto, and all blockchains that are utilized in the Internet of Value are going to do very well.
The growth of these technologies and the considerations for Congress and regulators will only continue to grow. That's why next Congress, this committee should create a financial technology subcommittee in order to provide the proper attention to this expanding and exciting area. A subcommittee would allow for greater focus on the details of many of the topics we've discussed as a task force. The consequences of Congress's action or inaction on these topics stand to greatly influence the economy as well as the location of the next great technological innovation like the Internet.
It is clear that the Internet of Value is the end goal. We are just waiting for nations to get their laws in order and the catalyst to set this all off. COVID certainly was used as an opportunity. I predict that we will see more emergencies for technology to advance. They have very few choices because of the debt problem. Time is of the essence.
Constructive comment also on cryptocurrency. Bill Foster and I really are working with the Fed on a digital dollar and have encouraged that work, and I'm pleased to see it advancing, and we need a cryptocurrency payment rail as a part of our payment system reforms. And I thank my friend, the chairman, and I yield back.
He's working with the Fed on a digital dollar. He's not testing the digital dollar. He's not reading white papers on the digital dollar. He's working with the Fed on a digital dollar. Folks, this is happening. It's just happening at a time frame that we didn't like.
Exploring the potential of next generation multilateral cross-border payment platforms will be a key focus for the BIS Innovation Hub. One such project underway at our Singapore Center examines how digital identity and payment rails could be interlinked to create a global stack.
A payment platform that's cloud-based and APIs plug into the cloud-based platform. Any solution is possible with APIs. You can simply add on to your banking software. For cross-border payments, there is an API that you plug into your software. There used to be a Temenos interview years ago where the CEO spoke about spaghetti system. And what that means is we are sending wires from bank to bank and another bank, and it's super complicated process. He later talked about a stack system that Benoit was speaking about. This is how digital asset solutions work. A layer of messaging, a layer of instructions, a layer of settlement, a layer of digital identity, and it's stacked versus a million wires that go in every direction.
The convergence of multiple regulators at the same time is part of the secret to success of regulation. So I want us to always keep that in the forefront and think about that as we move into the future decisions. One of the things that we do need to make sure we think about with the OCC is that they kind of crawl, walk, run, because if they step out by themselves without some what I call peers, it could change things. That being said, we do need to definitely think about how do we modernize and how do we think about the future. There's an amazing opportunity to grow GDP, grow tax revenue, and I think it's important growth.
A convergence of regulators, that means that the OCC is just not going to announce a new law without the SEC's approval. Everybody's working on the same issue at the same time. Everything's going to happen at once. It's interesting that he said crawl, walk, run. He also said pro-GDP, pro-tax revenue. In other words, the economy is going to get a breath of life. The stock market crashing, currency crashing, these are the catalysts we need to look for.
There is certainly no silver bullet, but what is clear is that international collaboration is essential to support technological capacity, ensure interoperability between national systems, enhance cross-border payments and remittances, support financial inclusion, and to avoid spatial and social fragmentation.
With everything that is going on in this world, the Internet of Value is the optimist outlook. That is saying that there will be a crisis and the central banks and governments will be able to avoid a full-blown meltdown that has the potential to send us back to the Stone Age. If they can't use digital assets to save the day, they will need to peg the currency to gold to stabilize it. Precious metals and crypto assets complement each other and, in my opinion, are the most undervalued assets right now.
Multilateral collaboration and proactive actions taken by central banks will also be essential for building a financial architecture that is future-proofed and resilient to withstand a large range of shocks. Technology and innovation will be front and center as we move forward into this new world.
Building a financial architecture that is resilient and future-proof. We are ahead of the game. Companies that we research and the companies that we dig into are the companies that are helping the central banks set up this architecture. Understand that the central banks create money out of thin air. Now our blockchain fintechs are working directly with them. Infinite money connects to a coin with a finite value. Crypto market caps are tiny, the size of a thimble, while the global markets are an ocean. If that ocean flows through the thimble,
The OCC, under the leadership of Acting Comptroller Brian Brooks, has undertaken tremendous efforts to clearly spell out the regulatory environment for emerging technologies and ensure their domestic development, rather than allowing for more departures to countries that have provided more clear rules of the road.
the fool has one great advantage over a man of sense. He is always satisfied with himself. Napoleon Bonaparte. Thank you for liking and subscribing. If you enjoy my work, please consider joining my Patreon.